Okay, well, I've got the Himalayan here, and I would love nothing more than to take a trip on two wheels today. There's so many trips that I've got bouncing around up here that I haven't been able to realize yet, but there's a small snag in this plan here in Flagstaff. Allow me to show you what that snag is. Yeah. So we got 26 inches of snow over the last 36 hours or so. Yeah. I had to shovel out a pathway just for my dog to get around the yard. So I think instead what I'm going to do is share with you a new adventure idea that I've had bouncing around in my head for almost a year now, and I think I'm finally going to basically really get rolling on it. And it's a year-long project that I'm going to kind of take piece at a time. It's not a unique idea. This is an idea that a lot of other people have done, even some other people here in my town. But let me go back to my computer and I'll show you exactly what I have in mind. Okay, welcome to On 2 Feet. I'm here back inside where it's nice and warm, and I'm coming to you live from a Zoom session. So just like as if I was giving a lecture to my students, I thought the easiest way for me to explain this adventure, this idea with all of you, is to share my screen and kind of walk you through some various resources and tools I found, but also kind of spell out this idea, where it came from, and how I plan to sort of go about making it happen. So it started about, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago. I stumbled across this website of Flagstaff. So Flagstaff's where I live, obviously, and in this map, you can see that the city itself is kind of bounded by this dashed black line. And that represents really just the boundaries of the city of Flagstaff itself. But inside that bounded dashed line, you see all of these different colored polygons. And basically those represent all of the different neighborhoods of Flagstaff. So each one of these is a recognized official neighborhood within the greater city. Now I'm looking at this, and of course I'm thinking, look at all those wonderful bite-sized chunks, right? And so as I was thinking about that, it also got me thinking about this idea that was basically made popular by ultra runner Ricky Gates, which is to run every street. So that's sort of where I'm going with this. Is I looked at this map and I thought, it's January. It always takes me a little while to get back into shape. What better way to tackle that and to really like motivate myself to get out there and get in my daily miles than to try to spend the year running every street in the entire city of Flagstaff. So that's my plan for 2021. I am going to piece by piece, mile by mile, over the course of the next 12 months, try to run all 400 to 500-ish miles represented in this map. Now, obviously there's some rules and there's some things I have to consider. First of all, I need to clearly define what my base map is. So, depending on whether or not you use OpenStreetMaps or Google Maps or Bing Maps or CalTopo, it doesn't matter. They all have slightly different definitions of streets and maps, and roads. And so it can get really frustrating. And also for someone that's very particular and likes to do things kind of very methodically like I do, that can be a bit of a problem. So what I've decided is to basically use Google Maps as my baseline. And using Google Maps, you still have to have some rules. So I'm going to show you here. I've got Google Maps pulled up, and this particular neighborhood, for example, is called Ponderosa Trails. This is actually a neighborhood I live in. And as you can see, there's specific streets that come up. Now, if you zoom out, some of them disappear. If you zoom in, more of them appear. So, it gets a little bit complicated. You start introducing questions like, what if there's a road that accesses private property? What if it's a gravel road? What if it's a road that's labeled on one map but not on another? So it can get really, really into the weeds if you let it. So to keep it simple, I have a few rules. One, if it's a private property road or private access, I don't need to do it. If it's something like an apartment complex, I might try to do it, but really I'm only interested in things that have actual labels on the map. So I can show you a couple examples of what I mean. Like say for over here, you've got this street that's called Sioux Drive. Well, Sioux Drive actually really only goes to about here, and then this has just become sort of an unnamed entry road, but I'm still gonna run it, right? So any place where I can, I probably will. But if it's something silly like here, this is a church, like that shows up on the map as a road, but it's really just a parking lot. This up here is an apartment complex that has all these different little roads, but really those are just like parking areas for the apartment complex. And I'm sure that if you sent a letter to someone that lived in that complex, it's just like has an address of Lake Mary Road, which is the main road out here. So again, it can get pretty complicated. I'm just going to try and not be too OCD about it. And basically, if it has a street name, it's a recognized street name, I'm going to run it. If it's something like a parking lot and it's convenient and it's on the way, I'll probably try to run it just to be complete. But if I miss something small like that, I'm not going to stress about it. The other thing is if I zoom out here and I type in like the city itself, Google will bound the city just like that map. And there's these little like enclaves or exclaves of like that aren't considered part of the city. Like there's this little neighborhood over here that's technically not part of Flagstaff. It's like an independent little like hamlet. I'm not even sure what you call it. I'm still gonna run it, and like you get down to the southern border here and you've got these places where like the road just like, I'm gonna have to just turn around. And why these roads, these random forest roads, but yet if you zoom in on satellite, clearly there's all these other trails in here that are not on Google Maps. So all that's to say, I'm going to do my best to run everything that shows up in Google Maps. Okay, so now with that said, I found some really cool tools that help to make it fun, help visualize it, and yeah, make it more interesting just in general. So let me show you what I've got. Obviously, we've got Google Maps as the baseline. So every day I kind of look at this map and I say, okay, what do I want to run today? And then I go back to this map and I say, okay, what neighborhood can I tackle today? Like I live in Ponderosa Trails, I can tackle that. And then maybe say Lake Mary Road neighborhood, and then maybe Bow and Arrow Acres, and just kind of slowly work my way out. Makes it fun. But on top of those sites, Google Maps and the Flagstaff map, I also have these three tools here. One of them is called GPS Visualizer, one of them is called GPX Studio, and one of them is called a GPX Merge. So each one of these is a unique way to deal with your data, edit your data, and then sort of combine and visualize your data. The first thing I do before planning a run is I see what I've already done. Now, I can show you this very simply. I've been running for 5 days now, and I started in the Ponderosa Trails neighborhood. And every day I run, I basically add to my completed map, and I'll show you how I do that. The downside is that the visualizer tool doesn't use Google Maps, it uses OpenStreetMaps. So it's not like a one-to-one exact, but at least gives me a rough idea of what I need to do. So I'm gonna open up the GPX Visualizer, which is this website right here, and I'm gonna load my merged file so you guys can see what I've done, and I'm gonna have it just load on the OpenStreetMaps. So here we go. This is what I've completed so far. As you can tell, it's already looking very like OCD, but I love it. So I have run every street in Ponderosa Trails and in what's called Bennett Estates, which is this neighborhood right here, which if you look on this map, it's this neighborhood and this neighborhood, right? Perfect. So again, this is OpenStreetMaps, so it's a little bit different, but now, looking at this, I might say, oh, I'm going to try and run, either Bow and Arrow Acres or the Lake Mary stuff up in here. Cool. So that gives me a reference point. Now, what I'll do next then is I'll plan out what I want to run. In this case, I decided I wanted to go run this Lake Mary area up here. So the way that I do that is I head out with a Garmin watch and I simply start recording from wherever it is I start and stop it when I'm done and record the GPX track. When I come home, that GPX track is uploaded to Garmin Connect or Strava or whatever. And I can then go to those websites and export and pull down that GPX file. Once I've got that GPX file pulled down, I generally will edit it a little bit to like edit out like redundant stuff. Like I don't need to run the same road like 100 times. So I'll like edit that out to make it nice and clean. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So this tool right here is called the GPX editor. So I'm going to load my most recent track, which is day 5. And you can see this is what I ran on day 5. It's only like 3 miles or something, or 4 miles, but I've already done all this in here. So what I will do is I will trim that because I don't really need all that extra road, and I will trim it from the back end as well. And once I've got it trimmed pretty decent, I just check it there and save it, and it clips it off. Once it's clipped off, I will export it as a new file. Now what I want to do is I want to combine it to my master file. And I do that using the third resource, which is this GPX merge site. It's the simplest site ever. All I do is I load in the first file, I load my already existing merged file, which is just called merged new. And then underneath that, I load the newest track, which is my trim track that I just created. And I say merge. And it does its little voodoo magic in the background. And all it's doing is it's clipping that older or that newer section that I did to the older section, and it creates a new file, and then I simply download that new file. So the first thing I want to do is I want to check it, make sure it doesn't look totally screwy. So I'll go back to that visualizer, and I will load the new version, which I just called merge track 2, map it again. We're going to wait till it finishes. Here we go, and boom, now you can see. So here we go. I've got all that stuff I had before, plus now it has added in all of this bit up here. Now that's great and all, but again, this is using OpenStreetMaps, and I want to make sure it looks good on Google. So the way that I final check it for my own peace of mind is I'll go back here and I will export it to Google Earth, which will create a KMX or KML file, basically, which is just a raw file of the data that I can then open in Google Maps. The problem is GPS Visualizer, if you want to map it in Google Maps, you need a developer API code, and I have not registered for one of those. I could, but I just find this to be easier for now anyway, is to export it using the tool. And so there it created this KMZ file. I will download that KMZ file on my desktop. And then what I will do is I will go to My Maps. Now, My Maps is just, I log into my Google account and I can create my own Google Maps. And I will create a map. And I will import that KML file that I just created on my desktop. And what it will do is it will load, and boom, now I can see my track on Google Maps, which is my base map. It's a little bit of a convoluted way of doing that, but as you can see, just by zooming in here, you might say, uh-oh, I missed this. What's this here? And what's this here? And what's that? Well, those aren't roads. Those are like bike paths. So obviously I can't do those. You look up here and you're like, oh, I missed this little guy. There's a little, like a little tiny dead end street there in the middle of the screen. That's a parking lot for a fire department. So I wasn't gonna run into just random parking lot. It's not a named street. It's just a dead end parking lot. Similarly down here, this was an apartment complex that I just didn't run through, and this was a church parking lot. So I may still go back and do those, but I'm not super stressed about it. Up here, this road, this Wild West Trail is actually a private drive, and there's a fence there. So I could not do the last part of it. It's private property. So there's little things like that. But for the most part, if you zoom out, you can see now my completed map. So I've looked at this and I'm like, great. It looks good. I think next I'll probably do this section here, this Bow and Arrow Acres. Looks like a nice little thing to do, probably be 6 or 7 miles. So I'm doing good. The last thing that I do, which I think is probably the most fun part. So yeah, really quick refresher. You've got the map of the town, which I'm using as my guide to neighborhoods. I've got my Google Maps, which I kind of use to plot out where I'm going to head next. And then I've got my visualizer tool, my GPX editor, and my GPX merge tool to kind of make the magic happen. In the end, ultimately, I check it against Google Maps using My Maps in Google. I'll probably at some point register for that API and do it that way. But for now, this is great. That's where I'm at so far. Now, the best part about this is that I can make it fun and basically live. So I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to run a program called GPX Animator. And this is where it gets really cool. So this is a very simple tool. It's got a very intuitive GUI interface. And I am going to basically load my predefined conditions that I like to load. I'm going to load that newest track that I just created, just so you guys can see. Everything else in here I've set for my particular liking. So I speed it up 3,000 times. I add a margin of 100 pixels in every direction. I set, all of these things have specific definitions. I set a tail duration of 1 minute. If you scroll down here, there's an option to turn off idle. And I also turn off what's called the flashback duration so that it's one smooth animation. Here's what happens. I click on this and I render it. It will create a MP4 video clip that you can animate and actually watch your track being created. So this is me running every street so far. So I just think that's so cool. You can even turn it into an animated GIF if you want. It's just, yeah, look at that. That's just really fun. And I can imagine as I reach out to further and further neighborhoods, this is just going to look really cool. And it's like a really fun way to visualize as I make my way through this fun project. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I hope some of this was useful for you guys. I feel like I'm talking to my students here and showing them like, some MATLAB script or something. But yeah, so I think this is going to be fun. It's going to encourage me to get out there despite the 26 inches of snow, which is not conducive to good running right now. So I'm going to have to wait a couple days for the plows to get out there before I can get back out and tackle some of these new neighborhoods. But I'm already excited about this. I think it's fun. I think it gives me a cool way to satisfy that sort of mathematical particular part of my brain where I like to do things very analytically, but it also allows me to explore neighborhoods I've never seen in Flagstaff. I've only been here for 1.5 years, and this is really allowing me to see new places. So that's it. Thank you so much for sticking around this long, and I hope that you guys all find a way to get out there yourselves. And I'm gonna go and shovel more of the sidewalk. So thank you all. Take care and be safe.